With the YNW Melly trial nearly back from being on break, a brand new update has just been ordered inside of the courtroom after it was reported stating YNW Melly's judge sides with rapper's defense, denies jury view of the car.
Her witness testified to the specs, the measurements in the car. We actually have photographs that have been moved into evidence that have measuring sticks that clearly show you the distance in the car. We don't even know where we're truly sitting because there are no seen photos that actually show them being in the car at the hospital.
I respectfully motion tonight. I don't think it's necessary to have a jury view. I don't think it's essential. We don't have the photographs of the vehicle in question. I don't think it's going to assist the jury to any great degree analyzing the evidence. So respectfully motion tonight.
Alongside that, we also received brand new information from the lawsuit against YNW Melly that seeks millions in damages, which included a video of YNW Melly and YNW Bortlen that we have never seen before. As the report would go on to share, the Stranger Things jacket YNW Melly is wearing in this video just hours after the crime is the same one Juvie had on when they left the studio early on that morning. YNW Bortlen is wearing the one that Sack Chaser had on. Crazy, isn't it?
You see him? Melly still turned regardless of what happened this early morning. He's still out here being very positive. Turned still. Hey! The dog still turned. Regardless of what happened, you already know.
Not only that's how both of them reacted just hours after the crime was done, but they were also copying the clothing that Juvie and Sack Chaser passed in. However, with YNW Melly dancing, looking like he's in the greatest of spirits, this is precisely how YNW Juvie's father would describe Melly's behavior when he was talking to him just a day after his son Juvie had sadly passed, leading to him believing that YNW Melly was the guilty one right away.
From the day one, I believe that Melly was responsible for my son on October 26th when I first heard the story, because his explanation when I finally talked to him in Cortland on a FaceTime, their response and how they was reacting, they showed no remorse. They didn't act like they was grieving, like they lost a best friend or nothing. They was, in my opinion, they was in the best spirits. They wasn't reacting to, they acted like they didn't have to take a loss at all. That's how I took it. And then when I was talking to them, I still had in the back of my mind that something's not right.
While YNW Juvie's father was speaking out online about his son's passing, we would even see YNW Juvie's mother also appear inside of the courtroom, where she had to confirm where her son sat inside of the vehicle, as well as where YNW Melly sat on that night.
Can you state your name, your full legal name for the jury?
Leon Phillips.
Okay. And are you related to one of the victims in this case?
Yes, I am.
How so?
I'm his mother.
And who is that?
Christopher Thomas.
Positive 21915. Ms. Phillips, did you see who entered into the occupants who entered into that gray Jeep?
Mm-hmm.
And is that a yes?
Yes.
Do you recognize where your son entered that gray Jeep?
Yes.
Which seat, if you can identify for the jury?
He got in the back seat on the right hand side.
Did you recognize the individual that got into the back seat on the left side, the rear driver's side?
Yes.
And who was that individual?
Jamel.
And Jamel, is that the defendant, Jamel Demons?
Yes, ma'am.
However, YNW Juvie's mom has been up to much more things outside of the YNW Melly trial, as she has now started a lawsuit against Melly seeking millions worth in damages. The lawsuit lists not only YNW Melly and YNW Bortlen, but also his manager 100K Track, as well as even including YNW Melly's mother and the men that were in the red vehicle on the night of their passings. The lawsuit argues that YNW Melly, his manager 100K Track, as well well as his mother, benefited from the passing of Juvie by using the hashtag #FreeMelly to promote his music. It then even states, with continued financial gain, notoriety, and prospects of more, tensions began to develop between members of the YNW group. They highlighted the video of YNW Melly's mother talking back to YNW Sack Chaser.
Show me text messages from Sack Chaser, all her friends, and all these people. Like, he's about this life. But I'm saying, like, who you ever out at? What you ever did? You couldn't even take charge. If you don't sit your down and don't ever come for me, because my credentials is real. It ain't even a joke. So don't ever try to come for me, because I don't even play them type of games. Like, what you got that I ain't got? Oh, you your look. I got big. On the end of the day, Melly is my child.
It then goes on to mention what they believe happened to Sack Chaser and Juvie, stating, and I quote, YNW Melly was seated in the left rear seat of the vehicle where he affected Christopher Thomas, aka Juvie. Following the incident, during the critical period where it was still possible to save Juvie and Sack Chaser, defendants YNW Melly and Bortlen instead changed their clothing and staged the drive-by. In doing so, they destroyed evidence of their crime and even manufactured evidence to support the staged drive-by by using a firearm multiple times in and around the Jeep. It even continues further on reading, YNW Melly's manager, Jameson Francis, and his mother, Jamie King, were involved in the cover-up of varying degrees, including hiding evidence. Then the most incriminating evidence for YNW Melly's manager would be when it reads, defendant 100K Track assisted Melly and Bortlen with the collection and disposal of the firearm used to commit the crime. Now, the lawsuit lines up nearly perfectly with what Sergeant Williams said on the stand. Williams, who is responsible for the reconstruction of the crime scene, had this to say when questioned.
Assignment, which is to determine if this is a drive. And my determination was that this is not a drive-by. And it's based upon this picture here, which is a very good picture to describe it. All of these rounds are done. One is done at a stationary position. The at a stationary position when all but one of these rounds are going in. The one round that has some movement in it, which is round site L here, the actually moving in that to create the little bit of a that you see there.
Okay, a lot of information in that answer, so let's break it down a little bit. You mentioned so I'm going to zoom in on site F.
Sergeant Williams is one of the best across the United States at recreating crime scenes, which is why, without question, he believes Melly is the one that did this crime. With the report that reads, YNW Melly is accused to be the one using the firearm in the situation. Williams, who said there was an item used 3 times inside of the Jeep, including 17 times outside of the Jeep.
Number, you said 17 outside the car. How many rounds were inside the car?
3.
And can you exclude the for Mr. Williams and Mr. Thomas as coming from outside of the car?
Yes. From the driver's side back seat.
As to the shot that killed Christopher Thomas, where did that emanate from?
Driver's side back seat.
Oh. Is it possible for there to have been 2 inside that car?
No.
Why not?
There is no time.
As this is when YNW Melly would begin looking very concerned inside of the courtroom. He was no longer joking and smiling and laughing around with his lawyers. Williams seemed extremely confident in his findings. This is even when the rap lawyer would speak on YNW Melly's defense team to get out of this crime.
You see what the experts are doing for the prosecution, and what's interesting to me is what the defense is doing when they cross-examine these experts, which is they're essentially highlighting the prosecution's opinion. Rather than try to pick apart holes and say, what about this, what about that? They're saying, oh, this is what you're saying, right? That's a fact? Okay, and they're knocking them down, and they're pinning them down, and they're saying, okay, I'm going to hold you to this. This is your opinion. You think you know for a fact that came after this person was bet. You think you know for a fact that these came from not a drive-by because of the trajectory, and I know bet. And so what you're going to see, what I assume, because what is the defense doing? Well, I assume they have experts who they believe are a lot more credible, who have testified a lot more times in cases, who have a lot more research and credibility based on their experience and history in the field. And those experts are going to come on and take the stand, and those experts are going to poke the holes and say, you can't possibly know when this in relation to that. You can't possibly know how. We'll see. But that's what seems like it's setting up for the defense's experts to come in.
If his lawyers are unable to disprove Williams' theories and call another expert to the stand, this expert's testimony is what will probably convince the jury that YNW Melly is guilty. However, YNW Melly's team still has a lot of hope for the trial, as this is when we would see Melly's lawyer questioning Sergeant Williams.
And you are aware that the person that claimed it was a drug is Cortland Henry?
I believe so. I don't know who said that it was a drive-by. I was just asked to say if it was a drive-by.
Okay. And you were aware that when Cortland Henry made this statement that this gentleman was nowhere around, right?
I wasn't part of the initial investigation,
okay.
So I don't know if that was included in their Miramar's investigation with that.
Okay, but what you are saying is whoever claimed was lying.
Was incorrect.
Once again, his lawyers are trying to give reasonable doubt inside of the courtroom to think that it was not YNW Melly by trying to put the blame onto YNW Bortlen, as YNW Melly's lawyers even did this in their opening argument when the trial began. When it was reported, YNW Bortlen had powder residue on his hands and a change of clothing when he dropped off Sack Chaser and Juvie to the hospital. YNW Bortlen and YNW Melly were the only two men in the vehicle with them.
Evan's lies, those were his lies. Cortland Henry shows up at Memorial Hospital, Miramar. You don't see him sitting there, but where you will see him sitting is in the driver's seat of a car with two bodies, car riddled with bullets. And when he shows up with a change of clothing, change of shirt, powder residue on his hands, evidencing that he had discharged a firearm. And he lies. He lies about where the incident occurred. He lies about how it occurred. And he lies about not having a phone. I think it was Miss Bradley herself who said, everybody has a phone in his pocket, not Cortland Henry. There were 3 phones.
Revealing that it has always been YNW Bortlen that has been telling the lies to the feds. He's the one with the powder residue on his hands, and he was the one with Juvie and Sack Chaser when they went to the hospital. As we would even see YNW Bortlen's interview, where he was caught lying to detectives during the investigation at the hospital.
And I'm driving, ducking for my life, trying to make sure I don't get hit. And you telling me, you telling me about shit. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to make sure I don't get hit. I'm driving. I'm trying to make sure I don't get hit. You know what I'm saying? What I'm gonna be worried about? You know what I'm saying?
I know it's not for you to worry about.
Shit crazy, bro.
But if you tell me it happened there's got to be some evidence there. There's going to be broken glass, just like there's broken glass over here when you guys open the doors and stuff like that. Okay, there's going to be broken glass over there when the windows got out. There's going to be casings from the people at your car. Okay, there's going to be evidence over there. Okay, right now there's nothing. I kind of think I know what happened, because I got information.
This wouldn't even be the end of YNW Bortlen's evidence getting brought up inside of the trial either, as we would see another forensic scientist that covered the passings go further in detail of YNW Bortlen having powder residue on his hands.
So the right hand of Cortland Henry contained 0 particles characteristic of powder residue and 2 two-component particles. And the left hand contained 1 particle characteristic of powder residue and 1 two-component particle.
Okay. And can you explain to us what that means?
Basically, overall, there was powder residue present on the hands.
If YNW Melly's team continues like this inside of the courtroom, YNW Bortlen might not have any other option but to snitch on YNW Melly, as YNW Melly's lawyers are constantly making it seem as if Bortlen is the suspicious one. He will want to look out for himself and give himself immunity by snitching on Melly. Bortlen was even brought into the courtroom, and he was even given his court date for October 2nd.
Cortland Henry?
Yes, sir, he's present.
But you in the back of the
status conference.
Come on up.
Okay. I think you're already trial to go to second round. We're set for October 3rd for trial.
You had a motion pending as well?
Yes, Judge. As the court, when we were here the last time, you let him go to church and stuff, you said about working, you would be subject to seeing the schedule. We filed a schedule for the next couple of months.
I saw that.
Be able to work. And I talked to his probation supervisor. She has no problem with him at all. She said that if he's going to go to work, she'd like anybody has to do, provide an itinerary, where he's going to be, how he's going to get there, how it's going to get done.
We then heard lawyers reporting further talking about Bortlen, explaining why he was the one that received bond and not Melly.
And he was able to negotiate a bond for him because of the charges that he was charged with, because they felt that he wasn't the man, and because of his prior criminal history, which I think was very sparse. So all those things went into whether or not he was going to be given a bond. I think at the time that the bond was being argued, there was the evidence that was being presented at his bond hearing was very difficult to kind of gel together in terms of, as you've seen during the trial, right? So there's a lot of things that are going on in the trial that you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't really gel. Some things are out of whack. And that's what happens at an Arthur hearing when you're moving for bond on this type of charge.
Revealing that the feds believed all the way from the beginning that YNW Melly was the man that did this crime, and Bortlen was not that big of a part of it. However, this is when a lawyer then answered a very important question.
Is it too late for Cortland to plea?
It's like the Justin Bieber song, it's never too late to say sorry, I think. No, I don't think it's too late. It's never too late. I've had individuals been offered pleas but turned them down in the middle of trial. I've had people offered pleas before a verdict came back. So it just depends on the case, depends on the prosecutor, depends on the actual charges. So no, it's never too late for that. He could take a plea in the middle of his case. I don't think that would happen. If he was going to take a plea, if there was going to be a deal, it would be in the middle of Melly's case.
If the prosecution somehow convinces Bortlen to take a plea deal, then it is over for YNW Melly, assuming that they were the ones responsible for the passing. However, YNW Bortlen would still have to do some sort of time behind bars, which may keep Bortlen from taking a plea deal altogether. However, it's not all bad for YNW Melly so far. Up until the point of Sergeant Williams, Melly was in great spirits inside of the courtroom, as we saw multiple experts get called to the prosecution stand, where they provided little to zero evidence against Melly, and even in some cases, they would go on to make Melly look innocent. We would even see a firearm expert take the stand, where he would share that he never found the item that was used in the crime, which would make YNW Melly smirk in the courtroom.
Why not?
So the first thing is I didn't have a firearm, so I can't know which I'm going to use in order to replicate any of my tests. So I can't make tests for this determination because I don't know what was used.
Okay. Do you have a...
We would then even see an undercover detective named Danny Polo share this in the courtroom while wearing his ski mask.
And they would quickly get checked. That happened to those two kids. I don't know how old two guys that were claiming money, the Island Boys, with the fun haircut.
Okay.
Yeah, they were claiming to be members of, which is a set of, and they quickly got checked by almost every that could find them on social media. They got framed, and they then had to recant and apologize.
Did you find any evidence whatsoever of any recanting or apologizing by Mr. Demmons in the records that you reviewed?
There's no recanting, there's no apologizing, there's no one calling out Mr. Demmons for being a fake.
Then fast forward into the second day of his testimony, the judge would then make him remove his mask, and it seemed as if YNW Melly knew exactly who Danny was.
Yes, sir. You can take off your mask.
Yes, sir.
Over. State's objection, Your Honor, based on the previous issues.
Jury entering.
Overall, this made it look as if YNW Melly was affiliated with a street team. However, Danny Polo would share that YNW Melly stopped responding to leaders of street teams when they were trying to recruit him, maybe proving that YNW Melly was never even in a team.
Now, Melly's defense is now entering into cross-examination of Danny Polo. And what Danny is admitting on the stand, now Danny Polo had admitted that YNW Melly was actually being recruited by two different sets. And based off of the text message thread between the different individuals trying to recruit Melly, Melly was not replying. Melly stated weeks later that he was so busy doing radio interviews and shows that he just didn't have time to reply. And if you go back and read the text messages, those recruiters were basically begging Melly to reply back. And he didn't. Because Melly was an up-and-coming rapper who had a ton of money and ambition, and any of these different groups would love to have him under their roster. Because Melly wasn't interested in being a he was being labeled as somebody who was false flagging. It's possible that it was Shine that did the drive, all because Melly didn't want to be a part of their group.
As if that wasn't good enough for Melly, we would even see another witness fall through for the prosecution, as when they called Melly's ex-girlfriend's mother to the stand to speak on what YNW Melly said to his girlfriend at the time on that night, she said that she forgot what her statement initially even was.
I do remember that they kind of put me and my daughter and take her to jail for accessory. I do remember that.
Yes. And in terms of the statements that you made about what happened, you don't have any recollection of that. Did you read this statement multiple times?
I looked at it and I just didn't recall it, and I don't know.
And so you indicated you hoped you were truthful with law enforcement.
Yes, I did.
I have to ask you to be more definitive. Were you truthful?
I don't remember what I said to them back then, so if I was to tell you something now, I could be lying. I don't want to lie on the stand because you're going to take me to jail. So I'm saying what you want me to say.
I do not want you to say anything. I want you to tell the truth.
Okay, that's what I'm doing.
After this, an FBI agent then took the stand. This FBI agent specializes in cell phone data research, where we would see, and I quote, YNW Melly's lawyer questions an FBI agent that analyzed YNW Melly's phone at the time of the crime.
Based on the information, you can't really tell the court precisely which locations these phones are following in, can you?
No, one of the limitations of cellular analysis is that you can only say a general area where the device would be at a given time.
All right. So even with the general analysis, all of the stuff that we've gone through for about 4 or 5 hours, at the end of the day, you can never give an exact location.
True.
And could you tell if somebody was walking around a car with the phone? Would you be able to tell that?
No.
So it'd be your testimony that this phone, 9807, could be from here to here, correct?
Yes.
And what was the distance?
Making it very clear in the courtroom that they could not pinpoint the exact location of YNW Melly's cell phone, once again leaving reasonable doubt that the phone might not have even been at the crime scene when it happened. However, then a DNA specialist took the stand and it became much more interesting. His job was to go over DNA research on items that were found at the crime scene. This may have been YNW Melly's biggest win yet, as it goes to read, DNA analyst confirms YNW Melly's DNA was not found on multiple items that were recovered at the crime scene.
So going to item number 22, the swab from the Gucci sandals. We're able to compare the profile from Mr. Demons as opposed to the profile developed from those sandals.
I did, and he was excluded.
The stain on the front of the t-shirt, item number 23, we're able to compare Mr. Demons' profile to that.
I did a comparison, and he was again excluded.
What about item number 24, the cutting of the stain of the rear of the t-shirt?
After comparisons were done, he was excluded.
Okay, then on item number 25, the swab of stain from the Air Jordans.
Again, an exclusion.
Going on to item number 26, the swab from the yellow jacket.
An exclusion as well.
And in terms of the item number 27 and 28, the swabs at the Gatorade bottles. What were the results on that?
Those were both exclusions.
The only spot that had YNW Melly's DNA was on the car door handle, which came from him jumping into the vehicle after the recording session at the studio.
Excuse me, you're able to see? Yes, all right.
But it wasn't until the prosecution announced that YNW Melly was in fact picked up by rapper Fredo Bang, and this changed everything.
And Chris Thomas are. So what you're also going to find out is while Mr. Demons is out there on the side of the road, 4 in the morning, 4:42 specifically, he sends a drop pin, digital homing beacon, to his current location, to one of his friends, Frederick Givens. Frederick Givens is also involved in the music industry, and he asked to be picked up. Frederick Givens, then about 11 minutes later, is sent another drop pin where Mr. Demons has moved a couple of meters. What you're going to find out as well, though, is these digital leashes, they have more than just phone calls.
With the information of Fredo picking up YNW Melly being brought into the court case, this can be one of the ways YNW Melly can be found innocent. If only his lawyers can prove that YNW Melly was picked up by rapper Fredo Bang before the crime happened, this would change the entire trial. All of the witnesses except Sergeant Williams didn't provide concrete proof of YNW Melly being guilty. Melly would then be found in great spirits in the courtroom.
I think it was very request the jury step down. Counsel remain. All with the defendant and witness. Yes, counsel, I'm sorry. I just figured it was easier if we just let the jury go.
Understood.
Makes sense. Your Honor, may we have this discussion just in case there needs to be some supplementation testimony outside the presence of the.
Sure.